Good morning, welcome to New Buckenham Historical Wargamers. Today we are doing Boudica's final battle in 61 AD against the Roman forces of the Governor Suetonius Paulinus. And if you head this way, Mr. Cameraman, as you can see, it's fairly self-explanatory, I think. We've Boudica's horde arrayed at the bottom of the hill, Boudica herself in her chariot rallying her warbands. And no doubt you can see the Roman line at the top of the hill. And we're getting a very good panning shot there of the Celtic horde of Boudica's army of Iceni and Trinovantes, and no doubt some other associated disaffected tribes. And here we have the Roman line, various centurions and tribunes encouraging, and Paulinus, the governor of Britannia, looking on. He picked this position to funnel the overwhelming numbers of ancient Britons up onto the plateau with the woods at his back, knowing that he either had to win this battle or lose everything. So if any encouragement was needed for his legionaries with trees at their back, it was quite literally do or die for the legionaries of the 20th and 14th and their attendant auxiliaries. So we're about to start and see what happens somewhere on a lost battlefield in England between the ancient Romans and the ancient Britons.
When the Romans invaded Britannia in 43 AD, the Iceni tribe had quickly allied themselves with the invader, paying tribute to Rome and being allowed to be ruled by their own kings. But 17 years later, when Prasutagus, the king of the Iceni, died, the Romans decided to incorporate his kingdom into the new province. When his widow, Boudica, protested, she was flogged and her 2 daughters violated. This Roman brutality sparked one of the most famous rebellions in history. Boudica raised her outraged people and other disaffected tribes in open revolt, overran Colchester, London, and St. Albans, burning them to the ground, before meeting the army of the Roman governor, Suetonius Paulinus, somewhere along or near Watling Street, rode in her chariot among her massed warriors, some 50,000 or more, telling them to win this battle or perish. That is what I, a woman, plan to do. Let the men live in slavery if they will. The Roman army, no more than 15,000 strong, stood on higher ground at the end of a narrow defile with trees on either side and thick woodland at their backs. The ground was well chosen by Paulinus. The defile would narrow the front of the vastly numerically superior Britons. Their attack would have to be made uphill, and with the woods at their back, his men were made fully aware that this coming battle was, starkly, a case of do or die.
Paulinus had told his men, "Ignore this racket made by these savages. They are not soldiers. They are not even properly equipped. We have beaten them before, and when they see our weapons and feel our spirit, they will crack. Stick together. Throw the pila, then push forward. Knock them down with your shields and finish them off with your swords. Forget about booty. Just win and you will have the lot."
The British host surged forward, chariots leading in one gargantuan head-on assault, their war cries and haunting blasts from their carnixes adding to the tumult as thousands of determined warriors ascended the hill. The Roman infantry braced themselves as the cacophonous noise from the thousands of fired-up warriors and attendant chariots, like a raging storm, hurtled toward them.
Now, on his mark, the cornicern sounded and the legionaries discharged their 2 volleys of pila at the fast-closing enemy, the Britons immediately taking casualties. The legionaries then moved their shields to their front, tight to the shoulder, and smoothly unsheathed their swords, brought forward and held low in practiced, deadly intent. The Roman artillery, their well-named tormenti, took aim at the chariots and their shooting was fearsome, creating havoc among the chariot teams. The mass of the British warriors, barely checked in their running advance by the pila, slammed home.
The ensuing hand-to-hand fighting was intense and bloody, the crest of the defile becoming a murderous killing zone. A band of naked fanatics led the British charge against the Roman auxiliary cohorts holding Paulinus left. In a brutal struggle, they tore a gap in the line that allowed some of the freewheeling chariots to career through and behind the Roman lines.
The fanatics were then cut to pieces and the Roman line restored, but the chariots remained, and bravely made for the Roman governor, aiming to bring victory by killing Paulinus. The Roman governor's mounted legionary cavalry held close behind him in reserve. galloped forward to cut these chariots off and rapidly dispatched the warriors and their drivers to a man. From his vantage point, Paulinus, now in relative safety, surveyed the progress of the battle. Despite the heavy pressure on his left, his line had stabilized there, and so he now ordered the cornicers to sound the advance. As one, the legionaries and auxilia, with pile driver force, punched their way forward, forming a series of wedges, centurions to the fore. The leading, best equipped, and bravest of the British warriors were, by now, either dead or wounded, and as the remaining mass were compacted back down the hillside, panic began to set in and spread. The disciplined legionaries, sensing victory at last after such a tough and vicious combat, were now cutting a bloody swathe through the wavering tribesmen, the Roman cavalry pushing in among them from the wings.
The fighting now became a slaughter as Boudica's disorganized army fled from the fatal, blooded, hillside, only to be crushed against their plunder-laden carts and wagons that were attended by their families and dependents. These camp followers, probably greater in number than their warriors, hoping to watch a great victory, were now caught in the chaos of defeat, and the Romans, bent on revenge, slew all they caught.
Welcome back. The game has been called, and the Romans have yet again beaten up Boudica and her warriors on an unknown field in England. And I'm happy to say, as I played Paulinus, although I was nearly overrun by a group of chariots, we drove them back, and in fact we've beaten the whole ancient British army. Having said that, they did fight very, very well indeed. As the camera pans down, you will see that the centre of the Iceni and Trinovantes and various other tribes has been completely hollowed out, and the Romans only lost a cohort in the end, with another one in quite a bad shape. The auxiliaries on the flanks did have quite a hard fight, and it was on the left flank of the Romans where they broke through with their chariots. But as you can see, as the camera comes across, Paulinus and his generals are still there. And so history has been repeated, and the Romans have again managed to hang on to Britannia after a very big scare in 60 AD. But being this isn't round, it was only about the side. We're very lucky because